Okay, so today's work is going to be quite intense. In fact, I took off the one that I had, the living soulful, the last one that I put on for us, because that's going to come into the work that we do anyway. So as we carry on and do the work, I'll incorporate what I was going to do there. But there's just too much work to have not put in an extra day on the stages of the soul. And I am going to share the screen. But in the meantime, if you will just close your eyes, take a nice deep breath. And just make sure all your microphones are muted, please. And we're taking a nice deep breath. Just gently breathing in. Feeling the energy just coming in, soothing, calming, and with the next out breath, you're going to let go of all the stress, the tension, all the things that you've been carrying for the whole day. We're breathing in beautiful, clear energy. And as you breathe in, direct your breath down the spine and feel as all the energy comes together in the spine, pulling in all the energies that are scattered throughout your body. And then you see it becoming a beautiful golden line coming down the spine, strengthening the spine, strengthening the body, and just bringing all your energies into harmony. And then when you're ready, you can just come back. All right. So this workshop is going to be quite different. We're talking about the soul. We are talking about stuff here that's quite difficult to research and prove, because we are not born, we're not meant to be here and know it all. So what I do when I do this kind of stuff is I go and research, I read and I go and get information, and then I go and look for stuff that will back it up. And unfortunately you don't always find it, but you can find stuff that comes close enough. And the most important thing that I want to say to you of this work is you need to take from it whatever resonates with you. Always, always, always. You take what resonates with you. What does not resonate with you, you let that go. But it does not mean that we cannot talk about it. It does not mean that we cannot debate it. It does not mean that we cannot pull it apart. So I'm going to talk to you today about the soul evolution, the 5 stages of soul evolution. But it's actually stages within stages. So we're going to talk about the 7 stages within the 5 stages within the other stages of the soul. Quite a bit of stuff. And this work today, just today, is based on the Michael teachings. I don't know, do you guys know the Michael teachings at all? Okay. Now, a lot of people think when you talk about the Michael teachings that we're talking about the Archangel Michael. this is not the case. The Michael teachings started coming through in the 1970s. There was a group of people who were channelers, and in the 1970s, they came through as a soul group. And they called themselves an entity, and you'll see as we go through how they refer to entities as soul groups, which is quite interesting because for me, in my head, always an entity always had a kind of a negative connotation. But that's not the case if we look at this. And then I realized, okay, it's an entity, and entities can be either positive or negative. They don't necessarily have to be negative. So this group, they were a group of 1,050 souls that had been on the earth, had grown, had learnt, very wise souls who have come together and started giving information to various people, all in the San Francisco area. Now, what is quite interesting, and I just love it, but it also makes me nervous, is that I will very often channel information. And then somebody will send me a clip or a this or a that, and there's exactly the information that I got through in the channel. Or somebody will get information and I'll see it, and then it'll come through slightly different, but essentially exactly the same material a bit later. So what happens, I've learned through the channelings, that information is ready to come through, and it will come through to everybody at the same time. Not everybody, but I would like to think it comes through to all the people who are on the same frequency at the same time. So we will very often, I will say something, somebody in America will say something, somebody in Australia will say, and it all dovetails, all fits together. So this is what happened in the 1970s when the Michael, this entity called itself Michael, and the Michael teaching started coming through. It's very, very popular. It is also very much connected to Eastern philosophies and very similar to the teachings of the Sufi. So, but it comes down to everything that everybody else says. It's about love, it's about caring for the earth, it's about being compassionate, and it's also about self-love and being able to love and nurture and help others through self-love. So that's where it all started coming from. And this information that they've given us is absolutely, for me, it was mind-blowing when I initially came across it. But I had to sit with it because I thought I was going to do one thing some time, many years ago, and something completely different happened. So I'm going to be presenting throughout these, the next 5 modules, stuff from various people. This today is how the soul initiates, starts off, and how it comes to us. Next week, we're going to look at how the soul knocks on our door to open up for it and actually work with us. But to start off with, the very first thing that we get is that we have essence. Now, essence is a unit of consciousness or a spark that comes from the all that is, comes from the Tao, the great spirit, Father, Mother, God, whatever you want to call it. That spark is called the essence within each one of us. It's what you and I have always referred to, and I will always refer to as spirit. Okay, then they've got the soul, then there is the soul, and after that there is the personality. Those are the 3 aspects of spirit within our lives. So each person comes into this world with a specific destiny, says Osho. He has something to fulfill, some message to be delivered, some work has to be completed. You are not here accidentally. Oops. You are not here accidentally. You are here meaningfully. There is a purpose behind you. The whole intends to do something through you. I absolutely love that. The whole intends to do something through you. None of us are just here. Each and every one of us has a purpose. Each and every one of us has come here for Spirit to experience life through us. Because there are certain things that Spirit cannot experience unless in the flesh, unless in the physical. So we grow our soul through being here in the physical. So when we look at the soul evolution means the period that it goes from being cast off out of the all that is into the world. Once it gets cast off, it goes through certain stages. And you can see the age and the soul of the personality. Your personality is a very clear indication of the age of the soul. And you will see that as we go through it today. You will understand what I'm talking about. There we go. Because once you know, it's actually very easy to pinpoint the soul age of a person. Now, the first one that I want to talk to you about, and this one, I could get myself so tripped up on this. The very first one is when we look at the Tao. There we go. The Tao there right at the top. That is the all that is. That is the God force. That is where everything originates. From there, an individual spark, which is a unit of consciousness, gets cast out into a cadre. A cadre will consist of 7,000 souls. So that spark that is cast out of, not out, but cast down from Spirit will then divide itself into 7,000 souls. Those souls will then divide itself into 7 entities, consisting of 1,000 souls each. Now for me, that entity there, 7 entities, or 7 souls, 7 entities of 1,000 souls each, that to me is a soul group. That is what I would say is a soul group. That is how I see that. Right, then we go from there, and then you'll see there it says greater cadence is divided into 7 souls, consisting of 7 souls each. So 7 of them, then that becomes a cadence here with 7 souls each, and there are 7 groups of 7 souls each. That makes it ultimately 49 in a cadence. Does that make sense? Okay, so a cadence consists of 7 souls, individual souls. And the cadence has 7 of such groups with 7 individual souls. That then comes down, those 7 souls then comes down into the physical. Now your 7 souls in the cadence, they are the people closest to you. They are the people that without question will be in your life in this lifetime. Whether they come into your life because they are partners, whether they come into your life as children, no matter what they come into your life as, we are talking soulmates. So remember, your soulmate does not mean you've had a past life with him. It just means you belong to the same soul. Does that make sense? Because it's important. We tend to blur the lines. We tend to think that whenever we've had a past life with somebody, that is a soulmate. And you come across this person, and there is this chemistry between you and this person, and people think, oh, you know what, we feel so right together, we have to be together, we are soulmates. Soulmates fit together because they are part of that cadence. That's where they fit together. It does not mean that that is the person that you want to have a romantic relationship with. But because we feel so comfortable with him, many people will give up very good relationships to be with a soulmate, and halfway down the path start becoming bored and just not have. I'm going to stop with this for 1 second and say, the people in your soulmate, in your soul group, which is here, both your cadence and your entity, will make you feel very much at home. They will make you feel loved. They will make you feel as though you belong, which is what most people want. But a soulmate will not necessarily spur you on. I always use the analogy of a bag full of pens or a set of pens. Those pens all belong together. They don't look the same, like a set of Cokie pens, for instance. They don't look the same. They're all different. They have different colors, and depending on how much they've been used, different shapes and things. But ultimately they're pens, and they don't do anything for each other. A notepad has got 50 pages that are all essentially the same. They may look different because somebody may have scribbled on them, or they may be torn or whatever, but they're the same. And those pages do nothing to grow each other. If the minute because they are part of the same soul, so they've got the same lessons. The minute you bring some of those pencils together with that paper, there's a little bit of a friction, there's a little bit of stuff that happens there, but that leads to growth. And together those two will bring and present or produce something of a higher quality. But that's not necessarily soulmates. So please be very careful to understand that the person that you want to spend your life with may not be your soulmate. In fact, they're so similar to you that they can really tick you off badly, because who they are can really trigger your stuff for you. So keep that in mind always. So from here, the cadence then divides into the physical incarnation. The physical incarnation now takes place, and that's a different story altogether. Yay, Claire. Microphone?
With the cadence,
yeah.
It says there's 7 souls each, consisting, so it's divided into 7 souls consisting of 7 souls each. Is that there's 7 souls, but within each of those 7, there's an additional 7. Is that?
It's actually, I think it should mean the cadence has, each cadence has 7 souls.
Okay, so it's not talking about us.
No.
I've got an understanding of we're part of a soul. There could be an aspect of us in a different parallel universe or whatever. It's not linked into that component.
No, but your 7 souls, the 7 souls that belongs to the cadence, they could be in another universe. Okay, let me backtrack. This is why I redid it. We've got the entity, which is that are 1,000, 7 entities of 1,000 souls each that we belong to.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we belong to that. That is our greater soul group. That is our greater soul group. So it is very possible that one of those souls, or many of those souls, could be on this earth with us, and we could bump into them in the street, because they're all part of our greater entity, of our cadre, essentially. So, but this is basically taking our cadre, which is the huge big soul group, and making it smaller and smaller and smaller, and bringing it down to each. So the cadence, those are 7 groups of 7 souls each. Absolutely, they could also be a part of ours, they are a part of our soul group. But the 7, our particular cadence of 7 souls are the people who would be closest to us in terms of our soul groups. So I would very comfortably say that you and Michelle are 2 souls in the cadence. Not necessarily you and Chris. Not necessarily Lorenzo and I, because I don't think we are necessarily soul mates. Does that make sense? That is how I understand it.
Makes complete sense.
Okay, cool. Now, this is where it gets difficult. It now comes into 5 stages, which we're going to discuss in detail. So once we enter the physical state, that happens in 5 stages. Now, we could come back to Earth 35 to 400 times as we go through these stages. And the stages that we're going to discuss now, we don't go from one to the next. It's up and down, like we have with our chakras, like we have with everything. It's not today I finish this, tomorrow I'm there. These are stages, and we will come back and we will complete it until we get it right before we move on. And within the 5 stages, there are 7 steps that we go through each and every time. But we'll have a look at that now. From the physical stage, we go back to the astral, then we go to the causal, into the akashic. This is what happens on the other side. So what happens here is the cadre starts to reunite. So we start going through these levels, and when we get to a higher level of learning on the other side, then we start going into the mental, messianic, and Buddhaic bodies, or energies and entities again. And these guys, they don't really come back. They don't have to reincarnate because they've got it down pat. The reincarnation happens more here at the bottom. So you can see here, these here are pretty much still connected to the physical. They would go through their lessons in these bodies. And it's very interesting, I was shown when I was drawing this up, that this resonates with our bodies. So my causal body is connected to these causal planes. So I get a lot of my information, my guidance, and my, I would say, healing as well from the causal, in my causal body, from the causal plane here. Does that make sense? Remember, we have the 7 bodies that we spoke about right at the start. So those bodies of ours are also here, connected into these planes. And we get the guidance and the protection and the healing and everything that happens in our causal body sits there. I was working during the night with an entity that has shown up. I'll be with you in a minute, Michelle. With an entity that is around. And I was shown very, very, very clearly that entity was sitting in the causal body. So we're not talking about a physical person, a physical being being disturbed by an entity. That disturbance is happening in the causal body. So if I need to work on an entity that is sitting in the causal body, that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go into the causal body of that person, and I will call on the guides or whoever it is that is connected to us on the causal plane. We don't ever think about that, but that is what we will do. Okay, and then here, from the mental, between the akashic and the mental, the cadre starts to reunite, and then they come back from being one soul to 7 souls to 1,000 souls, and so it carries on until we're sitting with an entity here, like the Michael teachings, that are bringing their wisdom together and giving it back. So we're starting off as 7,000 here. By the time we come back to the Budaic, we're back to the 7,000, being a part of the 7,000, and really, really embodying, well, I don't really know that they can call it embodying, but really being a part of all that is, because that is what sits there up there, is honestly, truly being fused with the all that is. Does that make sense? Michelle, you wanted to ask something.
I wanted to ask, what is the purpose of the Kundre, the entity, the Candace? What is the purpose of subdividing it the whole time like that? What is that? What does it benefit? What does it contribute? What is the purpose of it?
I think what happens is, look, when the spark comes down, we're just asking Spirit here. When the spark comes down, we are talking about a pure spark. We are talking about pure spark, pure God energy coming into the world. But now, in order to experience the world at the different levels, it will start dividing to make the experience more finite. For the experience of that soul entity or that spark to become more finite. Because it's only here in the physical that it really experiences emotion, for instance, physical pain, all of that can only be experienced here. So as you are coming down here, the more you want to explore, the more you are going to divide into smaller energies in order to have more of a sensual, is sensual the right word? Sensory experience. I think that's what I would want to say. More of a sensory experience. So your sensory experience becomes more the more you subdivide. Until you get to here in the physical where you are one soul. Still attached to all of this. You came out as a part of that soul. Does that answer it?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. It's just such a, I'm trying to look at the analogy of that snowflake that became tainted, and as it moves through its stages, obviously to get back to these other two aspects at the top there, I'm just trying to place it or process it, but yeah, thank you.
Well, for me, if we take the concept, you're talking about the snowflake, but if we take the concept of us coming into the world as a spark, as a light being, and then we start putting out, as we start experiencing the world, we're experiencing all the beauty and all the magic, but we bring our own experiences to it. And then that energy goes around. As we know, energy goes in circles always. So it will go in circles, it'll pick up stuff along the way and bring that back to us, which means we're not as pure anymore. Because now these energies that are coming back are not as pure and as light as the spark was initially. So it now adds to our being, so we become more dense. Because I would feel, my sense is doing this, that the spark becomes more dense all the time. to experience more. Because that is the purpose of the spark. It is for Great Spirit, it's for God, for the God force, to experience the physical. And to experience life and to experience its creation. Now, to experience its creation, which would include, for instance, nature and all of that, we need to be in the physical to experience that. Make more sense? Okay, cool. Yep, Claire?
Sorry, I'm not getting my microphone right today. Just wanted to confirm that you hit the beginning part of that circle speaks of very much a soul aspect.
Yeah.
And then coming into the physical space, which is our bodies.
Yeah.
When we then look at the astral, the causal, the akashic and mental, that's still us within our physical bodies.
No.
But that's the soul aspect.
No, when we go through these are, look, we're not just physical. We have to get past the concept that we are just physical.
Yeah.
So we have those 7 bodies also, which goes into the astral, the causal, and the akashic. So pretty much it is there, it is available to us, but we're not functioning and I suppose we are learning, but we're not functioning so much there. Our focus is not there. When we go into it to do healing or anything like that, then we can access it. But our functioning is in the physical. Our learning, everything takes place in the physical. For me, I would say that because this is here, the soul goes into the astral, goes into the causal after passing. So when it passes, that's when it goes into the astral. And that's when the astral becomes the active place of learning. And they go through that learning. From there, they will pass on to the causal. And then on to the akashic. And my sense is before it even hits the mental, or between the akashic and the mental, that is when the reincarnation will take place. That is when they will then probably come straight back to the entity, join that group there, and incarnate again from there. Yep, Michelle?
Sorry, Stan, I know you're having to get through this, but I just want to also understand.
It's more important. It's more important to understand this. Really, it's important to understand it. So don't apologize.
So the physical, obviously within the physicality, we can tap into the astral, causal, and akashic record aspect.
Yes.
These are things that we expand into, and when we kind of working spirit actively like that, we do go in and out of those spaces, but we obviously anchor those things within the physical being.
Yeah.
What you're referring to on the image here is when a person has finished the stages of the physical and then move into the astral, causal, akashic aspect, and then reincarnate into the entity. But
okay.
Yeah.
Those, you're going to see now, when we move on, that there are so many stages of the soul. Mm-hmm. So this physical does not mean we've finished the physical. It means we've finished this particular journey in the physical. But we will come back to the physical. So we will come back here, and we will probably come into the entity, back to the entity as I understood it. You'll come back to the entity, and from there you will engage to reincarnate, and then you will come into, okay, who are the 7 souls that you are coming into the earth with, and then back in here. And this change will happen because I can't see them bringing us back from here to there. You won't learn any lessons. Our purpose is to learn the lessons. So you're going to go through this, then you will go through this, and it will all be analyzed, taught, whatever needs to happen, and your next incarnation will be with that knowledge in place. Now, you ask about these. We have chosen to work with them because we do the spiritual work. But the majority of people don't even know that they exist. So the majority of people won't even think of going there and looking there. It's just the people who are choosing to be more conscious. Because remember, we said right here, the soul is a unit of consciousness. So depending on your level of consciousness, you will integrate with all of this. Cool. Ready to move on from that one. And this is where it starts getting interesting. Any more interesting than that? I'm not so sure. Right. So we then get into the 5 stages of the soul. And I've just lost you guys. Okay. So the very first one that we have are the infant souls. Now the infant souls, their focus is to be alive. They come in, they are focused on being here, being alive, and that is what they are all about. They're all about being alive, making it, surviving it. And for me, what I found very interesting is it's pretty much the same as the base chakra. Very much to me looks like base chakra stuff. So when we look at the infant soul, they tend to be so, I want to say ill-equipped to some extent to really be here. They are so uneducated. They are not educated. They're just not here to really function well. They've just come in. They have no life experience. As I said, their survival needs are their most important needs, and they tend to be very close to nature. They love also sometimes being in nature and very often live in rural communities. That is where they like to be. It's where they feel comfortable. It offers them the growth about survival that they need. The knowledge about survival that they need is there. So they will very often come across as uncivilized people. They will come across as, some people may call them, simpletons, because they just really don't know what is going on. So they may often be called psychopathic, or they may appear. I'm saying may because none of this is cast in stone, but they may appear as if they have a developmental order. These are very prevalent amongst infant souls. And what was quite interesting when I wrote there, the may have some sort of developmental order, the message that came through for me very clearly was that is also possible because they tend to, I'm going to use the term interbreed with one another, because they just don't know any better. For them, that is a part of security. It's a part of their survival. So they may present as that as well because of the way they live and certain things that they do. They tend to be very naive, impulsive, and pre-conventional. So nothing conventional for them because they just don't really buy into it. And they will act on impulse very easily, act on impulse with no idea of the consequences. The very little idea, very little consideration of the consequences of their actions. It's not at all important to them. They're also capable, and they very often do, commit antisocial behavior, antisocial actions again without any consideration for the thoughts of, for the consequences of it. And they don't believe that they're wrong. They are so naive and they have no sense of wrongdoing. So very often these infant souls will end up in jail or in psychiatric units because of that kind of being, of living, where they have absolutely no idea, no sense of being accountable, no sense of accountability, nothing whatsoever. And yes, there is no pretense, there is no agenda. They are very naive, and they are, to some extent, completely innocent. Which makes it really difficult, because in comes a soul that is such a an infant soul. They've got to learn. But it's not always easy to help them to get there, because by virtue of the stage of their soul, they're not necessarily ready to go through all of it. They will go through it. Indeed they will. But it will take them time to get there. So that is the first one. That's the infant souls. The next soul is the baby souls. Now the baby souls are very much focused on belonging to a culture. So that for me again slots in beautifully with the sacral chakra. Very different energy. Much more about interaction, about being a part of a tribe, and still moving out of the big tribe, but more accountability here. Now the baby souls, they are very focused on their actions. For them, their lives are about safety, security, structure, and order. That is what a baby soul is all about. Safety, security, structure, and order. In fact, rigidly so. So their lives tend to be rule-bound. Their lives tend to be absolutely, this is how we do it, no other way. So they will be ultra-conservative. Ultra-conservative, very upright, moralistic, religiously devout, and mindful of law and order. Never step out of the line. Never. Because they just have too much to lose if they do. And if they do, if they go out for a wild night or something like that, that is not part of their being, they will absolutely destroy themselves with the guilt and the remorse. Very, very, very focused on guilt and remorse when they do not live according to their own set of rules. And their own set of rules are always will go hand in hand with that of their society and their tribe. So whatever the government says goes, that goes. They're the ones who we really want to kick under their proverbial butts at the moment, because they're driving us all insane with all their jabs and stuff. They will also often be considered square. People will often think that they're conservative, or as they were known in the previous years, as being a square, somebody who's very conservative. It's interesting, it's not really a term that we use nowadays, but it still is. You talk about it and people still know what it's all about. So that is the other thing. They're also highly principled. Highly principled. We look at them and we can think of devout Christian groups. We can think of the Amish. We can think of the Roman Catholics if we want to go there. So that is where you would find them. Very much so. So if you're thinking of those types of groups, that's them. They're also very, very much aware of people's actions, the rights and the wrongs. They're the first ones to tell you who's right and who's wrong. Very much so. So be aware of that. And they believe that bad behavior is sinful. End of story. It's a sin and you can't get away from it. So those are our baby souls, and I'm sure that we can all see one or two people that we know who fits into that category of it. Then we have the young souls. Now the young souls come in and they tend to be extrovert, outward bound, worldly, ambitious, materialistic, competitive, very political, very ambitious, and very individualistic. The young souls are people that you can see everywhere. They're very much a part of being out there in the world, and they also resonate for me with the solar plexus. They very much resonate with the solar plexus, because I remember them saying the solar plexus is the time when it's a time of self-expression, of knowing who you are and standing in your power as a person who has got a lot to explore, but also the importance of that exploration is to express your individuality. Get to know and explore and express your individuality. And that is what a young soul will do. They understand and they love the power of being independent. Young souls like to be independent. They go after it. And the majority of them have a deep desire to make a difference in the world. Whether it is their world that they find themselves in or the greater world out there. They have a very strong need for that. They're very competitive. A young soul is somebody who will walk over another to get what they want and to prove that they are better, that they can do it. And they will always watch what everybody else is doing because they're always evaluating themselves as to what do I do compared to what he or she does. So I'm constantly comparing myself, constantly having to do better, constantly having to do more. And they have an incredible desire to win. And that's why I said earlier, they're competitive, they're independent, and they have this very, very strong desire to win. And they are probably, of all the soul groups, the ones that are most driven by their ego. The young soul is most driven by ego of all the others. Because they have to prove themselves in the world. That is just what they want to do. They want to prove themselves, and because of that, that is where they're going to be. They want to think for themselves. They want to assert their will, not just their will, but also their opinions, because they believe that they're the only ones who know. They believe that they're right. They're always right. They're always going to be right. And they will always have their own agenda and believe that it's right. So before they are going to buy into anything that you give them, you're going to have to really come to the party. And yeah, it basically sums it up. They believe they are right. They believe that their way is the only way. And that's what it's all about. So sorry for you if you don't agree. They also have very strong goals. They tend to set goals, work according to those goals. That is how they achieve what they do. There is Greta who irritates me. She would definitely fall under this. You know, the one who's always going around complaining about the earth and the smoke and the clouds, and I think she complains about everything except her own breath, if I'm not mistaken. But she would definitely fall under here, and very much focused on fame, success, focus, winning. Those are their absolute words. Fame, fortune, power, glory. Those are the words that would sum up the young soul. What is very interesting is they would also try and do things. They would very often express themselves through the arts, whether it's music, whether it's dancing, whether it's writing, whether it's making movies or whatever. And the interesting reason for that is because they are the soul group that mostly fear death. So they will choose to do something to immortalize themselves, to gain immortality. That is, that they have, a young soul has an intense fear of death. We then move into the mature souls, and once again we can see them. We can really see who they are and where they're operating from. Your mature soul comes in for me with the heart chakra. This is where the heart chakra really comes into play, because the mature souls tend to be thoughtful, reflective, and sincere within themselves. They're also very sensitive and empathic towards other people. So that's why I say that is the heart of the actual soul, of the mature soul. Their awareness is no longer egocentric. They've moved past the egocentric energy of the young souls into a place of being a part of the whole. And the problem is that the mature soul, for me, is probably one of the most difficult souls, because they need to be egocentrical. Because they need to know who they are. They need to know who they are, what they've come to be in the world, and yet they are constantly at war with their own ego and constantly not wanting to be egotistical. So they see the growth and becoming more focused on themselves for personal growth as egotistical, and they don't want to be egotistical. So there's that conflict that is happening within the mature soul all the time. So for them, that it feels like the ego is self-serving if they spend too much time doing anything for themselves. But as they do it, they also come to a broader understanding, and they have more peace around that concept. Now, that is very, I can't talk enough about that, because it creates a tension between ego and ego transcendence. I understand this very well. For me, this is a concept that I've battled with so much. That concept of you have to know who you are. You have to own who you are. You have to be able to say, this is who I am. These are my talents. This is what I have to bring to the world. And to do that in a way that honors your ego without making it the ego the stronger part. So I always say our ego has to work for us, not us for the ego. And when we get to that point, then the concept of ego, meaning edging God out, loses its power. Then that is no longer what it is. When you understand that that is not what ego is. It's not about edging God out. It's about finding God within. Then you can comfortably stand up and be who you are. Very interesting also is that the mature soul tends to have very narrow-minded view of the world. For themselves, they have a very narrow-minded view of the world. They may be quite conservative and decide not to be smoking weed once a week or going out and having swing parties and stuff like that. But by the same time, the mature soul can see people who are doing that and have complete understanding and acceptance. There's no judgment. For the mature soul, the word that replaces judgment is discernment. I may not do that because it doesn't work for me. If you want to do that, that's fine. I'm not going to judge you for doing what you're doing, but it doesn't necessarily work for me. So I could be very conservative, appear to be very conservative, but it's not that. It's just that I'm being discerning as to what I want to allow into my life. And that is because the mature soul is able to be flexible in the way they look at things. A mature soul will not have a right or wrong. They will always say, okay, but let's see how we look at it. This may not work for me, but let's look at it because you say this is the case. I'm saying that may not be the case. It depends on how we look at it. So your mature soul will always look at things from different perspectives. Consider it from different viewpoints. Literally consider it, in fact. Yeah, Michelle, sorry, I didn't see the hand.
Yeah, it's fine. So, I just wanted to, you can put it in place for me.
Yeah, boy.
A lot of people that are busy. Okay, my question is twofold. So obviously we come in, and we come in at one of these stages.
Yes.
Okay, so we would say that we come in this life, we've incarnated as a mature soul because we're having to do this whole aspect of transcending our ego.
Correct.
So all of our stuff that we choose, all of the lessons, all of the stuff that align with it is to facilitate that process.
Correct.
We might be given a mum that has a baby soul.
Yeah,
her
boy.
role is to just be that. It's not for her to transcend her ego. It's not for her to. It's just to be that. It's
Exactly.
Just to facilitate that space. Okay.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so difficult. Because we don't understand the different aspects of soul, we want everybody to see things the way we want to see them. You know, I've said on more than one occasion, I know I've said it to you girls, I cannot, because I view the world in one way. My parents, my father was a seriously devout Christian, and my grandfather even more so. But I cannot, because they prayed to a God to a God out there, or they did not see spirituality the way I did it. They lived their spirituality through religion. That does not make them less spiritual or less evolved, because within their soul group or their soul that they came into, they could have been extremely evolved. And we'll see that now when we look at the other 7 levels. So we also don't go from one soul to the next. It could be that you become a very highly evolved young soul, but you're not quite ready to be a mature soul. Then you go through that learning that happens in the Akashic and all of those, and then you incarnate as a mature soul. But you begin at the bottom of maturity, because you've got to grow and learn that. And that is why they say we could come back 35 times, we could come back as many as 400 times until we've reached the maturity and the old soul stage where we become wise masters and we don't incarnate anymore. Definitely. Yep, go Michelle.
And the second part of that question was that if we've had a walk-in, so let's say the soul was sitting at a young soul, the walk-in that transpired will then
stay within the young soul? So when you've
Yeah.
incarnated in a life, in a physical body, will it always stay within that stage?
It will develop through various stages in the stage, but you will not, as a young soul, all of a sudden bring in a mature soul.
Okay.
You could bring in a more advanced young soul. And this is a topic for another day, because how does the decision get made for a soul to come in as a walk-in? Because I know Doreen Virtue and those guys, they say the souls are hanging around looking for a body to incarnate or to walk into. I don't buy that. I really don't buy that. As far as I'm concerned, there is an agreement that is made prior to the incarnation that I may or may not walk in and change with you. And for me, that will always be, I mustn't say for me, but I say for me because this is what my guides are saying in my ears, so I accept that. It will always be of a same level, but more advanced. So a walk-in will always be to advance the work, I'm going to say, of the greater soul. Okay, does that make sense? That is how I'm shown that it would happen. But never will a soul you will have stuck souls who will hijack a body. That has happened before, where a soul is making a decision to go or not to go, or is completely not in control of their body. That is a possibility, but that's a different story altogether, and that is not a controlled and an ethical walk-in. Okay. Jen, are you happy with that? You looked very pensive there. Okay, cool. So, what happens with the mature soul is also that they will get into exploring life through art, through psychology, through philosophy, or through spirituality. That is how they would go about exploring life and looking at things. So the minute you get that involved with something like any of those, art, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, any of those, it rocks the world under your feet. Whether we know it or not, it always rocks the world under your feet, because it makes you look at things differently. You cannot go and sit and write beautiful material or make a beautiful painting or something like that and be transported out of your normal day-to-day reality without it speaking to your soul, without it touching on your soul and bringing you out of that. The mature souls also tend to enter into very loving relationships. And their relationships very often are relationships that run deep. They're not very flirty. I don't want to say they're not romantic, because they are. But they're not built on romance. They're built on a much deeper understanding. They're built on a much deeper love and acceptance, a much more of an appreciation of one another, and a deep expression of that kind of love and total acceptance of the fact that the other person may be completely different to them. Whereas the younger souls want their partners to be like them, to fit in with them. The mature souls don't have that strong need. Younger souls will very often see mature souls as bleeding hearts, people that they can actually even take advantage of sometimes, because the mature soul is so open to just giving love and energy. And then they are so focused on soul searching, on finding themselves, on understanding themselves, that they will have a lot of inner conflict. And their inner conflict will come from the questions that they constantly ask. Because mature souls are always questioning everything on their path to becoming old souls. That is who they are. They are wanting to know themselves more, wanting to know themselves better. We are not going to finish in time, so I'm going to step this up a little bit because it's really important that we wrap up. If I'm going too fast, please stop me. So the next thing we're looking at is old souls. Now, the old souls will walk through a door and you will know that is an old soul, because they absolutely exude depth and wisdom. It just pours out of their being. They've moved beyond the conflict of the mature soul. They've moved beyond asking the questions. They are so much lighter. They have a freedom about them because they are not constantly judging and questioning and wondering. They've come to a place of saying, c'est la vie. Nothing I can change. All I can do is be the best I can be. And that is good enough. And because of that, because of their untroubled, stable person and the level of unattachment to cultural structures and things, they are trusted. People trust them because they can sense in them and through them exactly how stable they are, because they're not swayed by the politics, they're not swayed by whatever is important or is popular right now. They're also very compassionate, very, very compassionate, and major inner strength. Their people are very strong values. When they come into the world, the beginning stages, they will still carry the need of self-actualization. They will still carry the need for true self-expression. So the majority of old souls, not the majority, but many of them, will be people like who is the man? Doesn't matter. Moore. Got his name right here. I'm going to tell you now. Thomas Moore. People like Thomas Moore and those, they are, and Jung and all of them, they made incredible contributions to the world, but they were really old souls. So they come in initially and they bring that knowledge to the world, but they don't just bring the knowledge, they experience it, they experiment with it, they do what they have to do with it. Towards the end of their lives, towards the middle and end stages of their lives, they become teachers. And their purpose in life becomes to share the knowledge that they have experienced in their lives, the knowledge throughout their lifetimes and in this lifetime. And that is what they that is what they will then do. They will bring that to the world, because that is very important to them. They seek personal fulfillment on the physical plane. That is why many of them will also do all kinds of interesting things. Give up their jobs, go and live on a mountain somewhere, go and do extreme sports, become artists, whatever it is they do, they look for fulfillment. And a lot of their fulfillment will come through that kind of expression, but also through sharing their knowledge, through helping other people grow, inspiring others. Because they don't look for fame. They don't want fame. They very often get fame, but not because they're looking for it, because they are following their heart, because they are following what makes them happy. And they also live their lives in their own unique way. They will not be dictated to about how they should live. They believe in letting go, just living, loving, and letting go. And because that is what they believe in, that is also what they do. And many people will consider them eccentric as a result of that. So people, especially the younger souls, your more mature souls will understand them. Your more mature souls are so on their way to being there. What I find interesting is your mature soul and your old souls are much closer together, for me, than all the others. The infant soul couldn't give a damn about emulating anybody. Your baby souls, they want to belong to a group. Your young soul is completely on themselves. But when it gets to the mature souls, the mature soul understands the old soul and tends to want to emulate them, understands where they're coming from, and start looking towards them for their growth. So it's quite interesting how those two souls, the mature and the old soul, are so close together and run hand in hand in many, many ways. Now, many of the world's greatest teachers are old souls, and they see themselves as part of the big picture. They see themselves part of the big picture, but also as a part of the whole. They know that they don't just think that they are part of nature. They don't just think that them and the neighbor are part of the one soul. They understand that they are a part of the entire universe, all of creation. And that is something that we are all working for, is a holistic perception of ourselves within creation. The mature soul has a much more holistic view of themselves, within themselves and their environment. But when you get to the older soul, it just goes so much bigger. They see everybody, everything as unique. Each person is unique, yet each unique person is an essential part of the whole. That is the concept that we so often miss, that the old soul grasps entirely. So for them, every soul, every being, every plant, everything is part of the great tapestry of life. Everything fits together and comes together there. They experience harmony through diversity. The mature soul still finds difficulty bringing the diversity together, understanding their place in the diverse human universe, whereas the old soul doesn't. It just slots in and lets everything go. And that is also the thing about the old soul, is that they understand that every aspect of the soul is necessary on this planet, because it takes a mature soul to accept and understand a young soul in order for the mature soul to grow. The old soul needs very little of that growing. The old soul is really here to express itself, to hold to kind of hold the reins and give the direction for for everybody who follows behind it, because they are not in judgment. They are completely accepting, and they will ask the right questions to guide all the others. And they can work with all the others. Many of the mature souls will work well with the young souls. The young souls will be more accepting of the baby souls, and the baby souls will be more accepting of the infant souls. The mature soul is getting to a different place. The old soul is just comfortable, understands them all, and chooses what to engage with and what not. Okay, so if we look at the next slide there, you can see that at any given time on the earth, we have 6 or 7 billion people on the planet, and they cover all the stages of the soul. And right now, the world is dominated by young souls, because if we look here, this is where we're at the moment. Very, very few infant souls, thank God. Then we've got the baby souls, and then we have the young and the mature souls. And they are the ones that make up the majority of the souls on the planet. And then your old souls, much less, because there are a lot less of them having to incarnate and choosing to incarnate. Remember that incarnation is still a choice. So they choose to come in. But because of what is going on here, and this lack of maturity, this high incidence of the young souls, there is huge pressure at the moment for things to shift. And it's having to shift because with this, the young souls being the majority, we are finding ourselves in political situations and things that are not good. So I said earlier that there are 7 stages. So each one of the 5 stages goes through 7 levels. And those levels mean that they all come in at these levels. We all go through all of these, but we go through them at different speeds, I'm going to say. Different levels of moving through them. So your very first level is initiation into the new stage. You come in, you are born, you know that this is your soul knows. You may not know, but your soul knows that this is new. You've not done this before because you're coming in at a new level. And even if you come in at a previous level, it's still new people, it's still new experiences, it's still new contracts. So we're starting over on the first level. A whole new way of being in front of us. We've listened to the call, we've taken it up, and we are here. But right now we have no clue what is waiting for us. So as that soul comes in, no idea what happens. Then the second level is where it starts building the foundations. So now what is happening is we are looking at what do we know, what don't we know. We come to understand what it is. We still don't know what's lying ahead of us, but we know that we have got the gifts. We know that we've got the guidance. We know that we have everything we need to get through it. And that's okay. The third level is rising to the challenge. A lot of people get stuck at the second level because they don't know what they're going to be doing. They're not quite sure that they have what it takes to move on. And then on the third level, they start saying, okay, cool. I know who I am. I am going to actively pursue my life. I'm going to actively pursue my life. I am going to do what I need to do with this new consciousness, because I'm coming in with a new consciousness. So coming in with that new consciousness, this is what I'm going to be doing. I then get to the fourth level. The fourth level is relaxing into it. I'm now enjoying being here. I'm understanding myself. I'm understanding life, and I'm understanding others. I may or I may not, but I think I am. I believe I am. So therefore, I will relax into it. I'm not fighting being here. So now we fully incorporate and consolidate the new consciousness in our being. The fifth level is when we start splashing out, expressing ourselves, being who we are, openly communicate who we are, speaking up. That's when you will see people. And sometimes what we can see here is some people who are at, let's say, a young soul. That young soul, from a very young age, will start being sporting, successful in sport, in art, and everything. And they will embrace it and they will express it without any holding back. And yet you will find other young souls who are too afraid to ever step out, pick up a paintbrush or a pen, and never amount to anything much. Because they're choosing to not really embrace what their soul offers them. Remember, when we get an astrology chart done, it'll tell you what your gifts are. It'll tell you when to do this, when to do that. We have got so many tools given to the soul on incarnation, but it's your choice which ones you're going to use. And the level, or the commitment with which you use the tools that you are given when you are born will bring you to these places of integration, of expression, and saying, here I am. I'm not scared to be me. I am who I am. I'm wanting to be in this world. Whereas we're looking at a lot of our indigos, and many of them at the moment we are finding are getting stuck at the second level, where they're locked up in their rooms. They're not really being exposed to art. They're not really being exposed to stimulation as such, which is something that the world is doing to them. Their world has become limited, and yet we are judging them for that, or people are judging them for that. So they have difficulty because of their current circumstances moving through it. Then we have the demonstration, where they give value and benefit to others. Now they're not just expressing themselves, but they're also sharing who they are with others, and in doing so, they tend to inspire others, uplift others. And the sixth level of any incarnation is the level where we tend to burn off karma. It's at the sixth level of an incarnation that a soul tends to get challenged, and the karma gets brought forward. And that is when we pay our karma. That is when we start encountering situations that says, okay, you've done enough now, you're mature enough, here are your challenges. Come, let's work with them. Let's work through them, because you're getting to the end of this incarnation. Grow up now. That's really the time of growing up and doing what we need to do so that we can reach absolute mastery. And mastery is the seventh level, where we have peak performance and mastery, complete understanding of why we are here. It may still not be a mature soul, but I am mature as a young soul. I reach a level of maturity as a young soul. And when we do that, we start acting as a role model. Then we start acting as a role model. Then we inspire other people. Then we are not ashamed to share who we are and teach what we know, and do so humbly. And we did manage to get through all of it. How was that? Luckily. So, yeah, that is the soul as it comes into the world, as it moves through the world, and as it goes back to spirit, to the all that is. So that for me was quite a mouthful. I think quite a bit to think about there. Yeah, Michelle?
Estelle,
Yeah,
so if a soul comes in, it's a young soul, they reach level 2, they battle to go past it, they commit suicide, would they come back and start off again at level 1 within that group of souls?
not necessarily level 1, but certainly the level they came in at. They won't regress.
Okay, but I'm talking about the steps inside of the level. So let's say.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just
Always.
They will always then start.
Always, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, yes, that level. They'll come back at stage 3, which is the young soul. Come back at stage 3, always first level, because their lessons are now different. They will always get the same lessons. Let's be very clear on that. Where there is a suicide, they will always be given the same lessons. But they may be given them differently. I was once shown that people will say, why is it so, it's so terrible that children get cancer? Well, it could be that that person was so emotionally broken that they could not deal with their pain and they committed suicide. Then they will come into this lifetime and they will be given something like cancer, where they deal with immense challenges and immense pain. And you talk to people who have dealt with children like that, and they will say to you, but they're like angels. Those children are so unbelievably kind, and they are so understanding in spite of their pain. So what sometimes happens is that they will be brought back to deal with pain, but in a completely different way. So the challenges that you get will be completely different that you will go through. Now, a child who comes in and gets cancer and then goes, that child may not need to go through that whole soul process. They may come in and in a very short period of 3 or 4 years go through all of that and then pass on, because they don't have to go through all of life, because they're learning their lessons in a very short space of time. And yes, it's terrible. It's terrible that they should go through pain, but we need to also understand that they chose that. So there is, will they go through those stages or levels? Yes, they will, but they could pass through them very quickly. But the challenges will always be slightly different, so there will always be those 7 levels. Any other